Minecraft, and it's another scoreboard tutorial. In my previous video, I did a speed challenge rivalry with Vaughn, and in that video we used the scoreboard to automatically track our progress. Basically, anytime one of us acquired one of the goal blocks that we were trying to obtain during the challenge, the scoreboard would automatically light that up as part of our score so that we could see how much progress we were making. And so in this video, I'm going to walk you through how I created that scoreboard. The first thing you need to do to use the scoreboard is to create an objective. And so I'll type T to type in a command and type scoreboard objectives add A dummy blocks. This will create a new objective named A of type dummy, which basically is a type that we can automatically increment our own values programmatically, and blocks is the display name. The next thing we need to do is say that we want to display this objective in the sidebar. Scoreboard objectives set display sidebar A was the name of the objective we created. Nothing is displayed yet because there aren't any scores yet. Next, I'll start setting some players' scores. Scoreboard players set --Brian A 12. I'll explain the 12 and the names in just a moment, but let me go ahead. I'm just copying and pasting from a text file somewhere else. I'll do another one, scoreboard players set Iron A 11. And so basically, each time you do scoreboard players set, the player name doesn't actually have to be the name of a player. It can be any text you want. And so in this case, --Brian and Iron are just the text that I want to appear over in the right-hand sidebar. And then the numbers I'm using are just going to count down 12, 11, 10, etc. simply because words in the sidebar are always displayed in decreasing order, as though they were player scores, and you're trying to show the top scores over in the sidebar. So I'm going to repeat these commands for a number of other blocks that we were trying to get in this particular challenge. And so, for example, I will put Lapis in the list, and gold, and so on and so forth. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a quick fast forward here as I type in all of these commands. Okay, at this point I've populated the scoreboard with all of the text that I wanted to have on the scoreboard. Basically, for both Brian and Vaughn, we have a list of all of the goal blocks that they were trying to create. Notice that in my list it just says, for example, iron and lapis, where in Vaughn's list it says iron period and lapis period. This is because, once again, as far as the scoreboard is concerned, those are the names of different players, and so each one has to be unique text. And so I used iron and iron dot just to make each different one unique text. And once again, the numbers are just meaningless. They're just to keep them in a certain order as they appear on the right-hand side. The next thing I want to do is add some color into the scoreboard. And by doing colors, we need to use teams. And so scoreboard teams add light purple. We'll add a team named light purple. And then I can go and say scoreboard teams option light purple color light purple. The first light purple in this case is the team name, and the last light purple is the actual color that we want to set that team option. So now anyone on team light purple will be displayed in the color light purple. And then finally, I can have some players join those teams. Scoreboard teams join light purple, Brian and Vaughn. And now our names appear in light purple on the scoreboard. Next up, let's color the names of the blocks, the goals for this particular challenge. Once again, I'll add a new team called black, because basically I want the different blocks to originally show up in black so that they are effectively kind of grayed out in the scoreboard. I added a team. I will set that team's color to black, scoreboard teams options, black color black, just like we did for light purple. And finally, I am going to have a bunch of different players join that team by typing Scoreboard teams join black. Who's going to join black? Iron, lapis, gold, redstone, quartz, iron dot, lapis dot, gold dot, redstone dot, quartz dot. And so I type in all of that, and then all 10 of those lines of text in the sidebar have turned black. And so this effectively represents goals that have not yet been obtained. And then the next thing we will do is hook up some redstone and command blocks so that as you obtain these blocks, it goes and lights up these things in color on the scoreboard. The next thing that I need to do is add a bunch more teams with different colors so that I can refer to those team colors later. And so I'm just going to fast forward through typing a few more commands that are very similar to what we've already seen. And there we go. I've added colors white, red, blue, and yellow, as well as their corresponding teams. Next up, I need to build some redstone. I'm going to start with this command, give BrianMCN, which is my player name, 137, which will give me a command block. It's important to know the block IDs, the numbers that correspond to various blocks in Minecraft, and you can find that information on the Minecraft wiki. I'll probably have a link on the screen or a link in the description of this video. In creative mode, go to the Redstone tab and go ahead and grab a hopper, redstone, a repeater, and a comparator as well, because we need to build a little bit of redstone. The first thing to build is a simple clock that will fire continually. We can build this by putting down a hopper, holding down Shift and clicking to have another hopper that's pointing into it, destroying the original hopper, and Shift-clicking on this one, so we have two hoppers that are connected to one another. Then I can simply drop in a piece of redstone, for example. Let me go ahead and get some more redstone in my inventory. And if I set down a comparator next to either of these hoppers, the comparator will flash on and off because the piece of redstone inside the hopper is just going back and forth and back and forth. Next up, I'm going to put down a redstone repeater to strengthen the signal, and then have a nice long line of redstone. So now I've got a ticking clock that's going to be going off every so often. The next thing I'm going to do is set up some command blocks. And here's what I'm doing. We're going to have command blocks like so, that'll automatically be fired every so often. And then out of those command blocks, we're going to place comparators, which lead into another set of command blocks. And I'll explain while we're doing this in just a moment. Now that we have this set up, every second or so, this clock is going to go off and cause whatever command is in this command block to execute. And if that command succeeds, it will then cause whatever's in this command block to execute. And the same thing happens for these other 4 rows of command blocks. Now the key is just to put in the appropriate commands. Here's the first command. If you right-click on the command block, it will bring up a console where you can type in the particular command. And the first one is going to be clear BrianMCN 22. Clear is the name of the command. That's my player name or in-game name, and 22 turns out to be the block ID that we talked about before of the Lapis block. Then I say done. Now I go to the one that is the output of that particular command if it succeeds, and I'm going to type in another command. In this case, the command will be Scoreboard teams join blue Lapis, which basically says the player named Lapis should join the blue team. Now what this means is every second or so, this command is going to fire, try to clear my inventory of a Lapis block, and if that succeeds, this command will run and have Lapis join the blue team. And what that means is, if I get a Lapis block into my inventory, then a second later it disappears, and on the scoreboard you can see that Lapis has turned blue on the scoreboard, showing that I obtained a Lapis block. There's also some text in the chat that talks about the command blocks who are saying that they have cleared the inventory and adding a player to the team. That is the essence of how the scoreboard automatically updates. I'm going to program the rest of these command blocks again in some fast-forward video. Once again, all of the commands that I'm typing in here will appear in the description of this particular video. And that's it. Now all of the commands for player Brian MCN, that's me, have been activated, which means that now if I obtain any of those blocks, for example, a gold block, and gold turns yellow by joining the yellow team, or an iron block, and on the scoreboard, iron turns white. And similarly, if I get a redstone block, redstone joins the red team and it turns red on the scoreboard. And finally, a quartz block will cause quartz to light up as white as well. And so that's how the scoreboard effect is achieved. If you want to have a second player, and I wanted to have logic for Vaughn's iron, lapis, and gold, I would do the exact same thing. I would just mirror this whole build over on this side and do the exact same thing, except for inside the command blocks. Instead of saying Brian MCN, I would say just Van, which is Vaughn's in-game name. After having created and tested such a scoreboard, it's useful to clear things off, and so I can go back to the previous scoreboard command, join black with all of the things in the list, and I can re-execute that command in order to reset everything in the scoreboard back to black. As a final note, it's important to construct this redstone near the spawn point of your world, more specifically inside of spawn chunks. Whenever you spawn in a world, you'll be spawning in spawn chunks, which is an approximately 12 by 12 chunk grid near the center of the world that is always loaded in your Minecraft map. This is important because it means that even if we were to teleport very far away, for example, if I teleport myself to somewhere 2,000 blocks away, it's still the case that even though I am not currently standing somewhere in the location of the world where I am near that redstone will still be loaded and running. And we can prove that it's still loaded and running simply by giving myself, for example, a lapis block. And we see it disappear from my inventory and lapis turns blue. So whenever you create some redstone that you want to be always running, make sure that you put it in spawn chunks, in chunks that are very near the spawn. You can learn more about spawn chunks in other people's videos. It's easy to search for that. One final note. You'll note that each time I obtain a block, in addition to updating the scoreboard, it also puts that message in the chat. If you want to turn those messages off, you can say game rule command block output false, and that will cause command blocks to no longer print messages in the chat. So now, once again, if I obtain another block, such as redstone, it's still the case that redstone went and lit up, but it's no longer the case that we ended up printing more text into the chat. So that's it. It's relatively straightforward. There's a bunch of commands, but for the most part you can just cut and paste them, making small modifications to block IDs or names as you see fit. I guess the two caveats to note in this particular example are, one, the only way that you can kind of test if a player has a particular block or item in their inventory is to actually clear it out. And so this means anytime a player obtains the item, it's immediately going to disappear from their inventory. That's just kind of the price of how Minecraft command blocks work for detecting blocks in a player's inventory. But for something like a speed challenge, that's fine. You just need to obtain the blocks once and move on. And I think the other caveat is simply kind of the limitations of the display in the scoreboard, both in terms of having to have kind of the dots at the end of the names, so that they had distinct names for Brian's iron versus Vaughn's iron, as well as having the scores on the right-hand side, the 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that don't actually mean anything as far as the competition that we were doing, but are just there to order the particular items on the right-hand sidebar so that they displayed in a pretty order. One other final limitation to note is that the sidebar can only display, I think it's 16 lines of text. If you try to put more in there, it won't work anymore. And so there is a limitation in terms of how many different goals you can use to display in the sidebar of the Minecraft scoreboard. I think that's it for today. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I am Brian, Lorgon111, and I hope that you guys are having a great day. See you again soon.